Hey everybody, it is Chief Meteorologist Jennifer Valdez. Hope you're having a great Thursday. Everyone can breathe a sigh of relief because Idalia continues to move further and further from the coast, and that means, of course, improving weather. But we're still very busy in the tropics. We are approaching the peak of hurricane season. So although we can breathe a sigh of relief when it comes to Idalia, can't breathe that sigh of relief until we're done with hurricane season. And hurricane season continues through the end of November. The peak is in September, so we've got a long way to go. So let's get right to it. I want to show you the very latest of where Idalia is right now. It's still a tropical storm with 60-mile-an-hour winds, and just as it did moving through the U.S., it's moving quickly to the east at 20 miles an hour. It is about 85 miles off the coast of Cape Lookout, North Carolina. So still bringing lots of rain to the Outer Banks, to Cape Hatteras and the Carolinas, or at least North Carolina. Still bringing some dangerous rip currents along the coast, some beach erosion. But it is moving east, so it is moving away from land, and it will continue to do that as it maintains tropical storm status, at least for now, and then we'll be watching it as it moves over the Atlantic. So it is expected to actually become an area of low pressure tomorrow as it weakens, but then watch what happens over the warm water. It re-intensifies to a tropical storm. The latest forecast cone, keep in mind, obviously can go anywhere within that cone, but the middle of the cone takes it directly over Bermuda this weekend. So although the U.S. no longer worried about Idalia and possible impacts to land, Bermuda will be watching Idalia because it could impact that area, especially on a very busy Labor Day weekend. A lot of people may be traveling to Bermuda. So if you have friends, family going to Bermuda, make sure you give them a text or a call. Let them know that Idalia is certainly a big threat for them. Thankfully, it is expected to be a tropical storm as it moves close to or near or impacts Bermuda. So it's not going to be an incredibly strong storm, but Bermuda, obviously a very small island, can't really evacuate easily, so it will be a forecast you want to watch very closely as we head towards the holiday weekend. That's not the only system out there. We are very busy in the tropics, and we've got Hurricane Franklin, which is a Category 2 hurricane with 100-mile-an-hour winds. It is out in the ocean, not far from Idalia, just east of Idalia, and it is moving east-northeast. So again, I like the direction that Franklin is going. When it's moving east, it's moving away from the U.S. at 14 miles an hour. The further north you go, the cooler the ocean water temperature. So that is a good thing. As this moves north, it is going to weaken into an area of low pressure, no impact to the U.S., no impact to Bermuda from here on out, and just going to be more an ocean storm than anything else, just going to impact all the boats in the water. Now, we've got Tropical Storm Idalia, and I want to go back very quickly because that didn't pause. So this is going to go fairly quickly, but we've got Idalia, we've got Franklin, but we also have another tropical system, and that is formed yesterday, and I want to show you, that's Tropical Storm Jose. That is just east of Franklin. We're also watching two areas of possible development. I will point out Jose is a non-factor. Don't expect it to be much. It could be a depression here, but otherwise not expecting much over the next couple of days as it moves over an area unfavorable for development. Then we're watching two other areas. The yellow area, which is very close to Jose and Franklin, has a 30% chance of development. And although it could develop here shortly, it's not expected to develop much more than that. It's going to move over an area unfavorable for development. So I'm not worried about that 30% chance of development with that area of low pressure. Then off the coast of Africa, this one more favorable. This is actually likely to be a tropical depression, and it does have a 70% chance of development according to the National Hurricane Center. But it is moving northwest, so that is a good thing. When we watch these waves off the coast of Africa, even though they're thousands and thousands of miles away, you want to look at its general direction. So usually if it's moving west, due west, towards the Caribbean, towards our area, certainly a much greater threat. But when it's already positioned itself to move to the northwest, more than likely this will not be a threat to the U.S. But of course, we will continue to watch it very closely as we continue to approach the peak of hurricane season. As you know, anything can happen, which is why we watch these waves, even ones that aren't likely. We watch all of them. The National Hurricane Center watches all of them because all of them can develop, especially when you look at the ocean temperature. This is the sea surface temperature right now across the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Atlantic. It is incredibly warm, bath water, what we call it, in the mid 80s. The closer you get to land, the warmer the water. So near the Keys or near the coast of Georgia, near the coast of Florida, temperatures even warmer. But this is what these systems need, these tropical systems need. They need warm ocean water, which is why the peak of hurricane season is in September. That's when the ocean water temperatures are at their warmest. That's why we don't see hurricanes and tropical storms in the Atlantic or the Caribbean in December and January and February. The reason that hurricane season exists when it does is that's when conditions are favorable for these tropical systems to develop. The tropical season does continue for the Atlantic all the way through the end of November. And the reason that we have it from June to November is that is when, again, conditions are favorable. We are now at the tail end of August. It is August 31st. So tomorrow is September. So we're actually getting into the peak of hurricane season. The official peak of hurricane season is around September 11th, give or take a couple days. But around September 11th is when we see the peak of activity. This is historically, of course, you can see a tropical system any time of year. And just because we had a very busy week last week, of course, because we had Idalia, doesn't mean we'll see that on the peak, but it's just a general thing we look at with trends and when we typically see the most action. And again, that's when the ocean water is warmest, but we also look at what we call shear. Those are the upper level winds above these tropical systems. A low shear environment helps these tropical systems develop. So when we show you those blobs in the ocean that we say have a certain amount or percentage of development, it's because we're taking into account all of those things, the amount of shear, we're taking into account where it is, where it's located, what else is in the area, and how warm the ocean water is, of course, the time of year. All of those things come together to tell us how likely it is to develop and how long if it does. Now, as we get through September, then by October, notice things start to settle down a little bit. So although we are very active leading into August through September, October still very busy. So we can certainly see hurricanes and quite a few of them in October. Then usually in November, we can let our guard a little bit. The ocean water is just much too cool. It's not as likely. We could see some develop in the Gulf of Mexico, but we're not seeing those areas of development off the coast of Africa, which is what we're seeing this time of year with that ocean water temperature very warm across the entire Atlantic. So we are plowing through the 2023 hurricane names. Look at all the names we've gone through. Arlene, Brett, Cindy, Dawn, Emily, Franklin, Gert, Harold, Idalia. We have Jose out there. Nobody's even talking about Jose because it will be a non-issue. We tend to remember the ones that impact us the most, the ones we talk about the most, but Jose is out in the Atlantic as well. And then our next named storm, which is most likely that storm I showed you right off the coast of Africa, that's Katya. So Katya, I know some of these names are difficult to pronounce, but Katya would be that storm that is expected to develop off the coast of Africa. Thankfully for now, even though it is likely to be a tropical depression or a tropical storm, don't think it's going to be any impact to the U.S., but we will be watching that. After that, we'll go on to Lee, Margot, Nigel, Ophelia, Philippe, Rena, Sean, Tammy, Vince, and Whitney. And because the season continues through the end of November, if we do go past this list of names, that's when we start going to the Greek alphabet. So you may remember we've had names like Alpha and Beta and Gamma. So that is possible if we continue past Whitney. But for now, this is where we are on the 2023 season. Atlantic tropical season. We are watching the tropics very closely. Obviously, any one of these could be a major impact, and that is why we watch these, because they impact us here in North Georgia, especially when they come up from the Gulf. That's usually when we feel the biggest impacts, when they come up the Gulf of Mexico through Florida. So for now, Idalia moving out, no longer an issue for us in North Georgia. No rain from it in North Georgia any longer, and our weather will continue to improve as we head towards the holiday weekend. If you want to know more about that holiday forecast, forecast. Make sure you join me at noon on Atlanta News First, and of course throughout the afternoon and evening, the entire First Alert weather team, the largest team in the Southeast. We're watching all of these as well as our local weather, and we'll keep you up to date as always. So I'll see you in about 20 minutes at noon on Atlanta News First.